I think we're ready to rock and roll here, aren't we?
Yeah, I saw most of the cabinet members come in as well.
Okay. We'll call the meeting to order. Roll call. We'll ask each one of you to acknowledge your presence. Bob? Here. Brenda?
Here.
Anna?
Here.
Katie?
Here.
Bill?
Here.
Larry?
Here.
Okay. As part of our regular board issues, would you all please stand and join us as we say the Pledge of Allegiance, if so inclined? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, this evening we only have one thing on our agenda. This is a special board meeting on this Monday, August 3rd. And our discussion will include the options that are available to us and that the administration and others have pulled together on our behalf so we can review these. In the end, we'll take a vote, not on the necessary plan, not on the individual plan, but moving forward as to if these three plans are acceptable. Jeff, would that be correct?
Yes, we're not voting on what we're doing to start the school year tonight. We are voting on the three plans that we'll be moving in and out of tonight.
And because
And also, well, go ahead. You're right.
Because we have such a, we'll have such a large conversation, I was hoping that Jeff would be able to run through the options available to us this evening. And we may call on, or will call on, several of our department heads, because it's important for us to know not only as far as the administration is concerned, but how we're handling this, let's say, with facilities, transportation, and the like. So if we could just listen to Jeff and jot some notes down as we enter into each one of the phases, like transportation and such. And then as we're finished, we can then relay these questions or concerns that we may have. Otherwise, it gets to be a possibly disorderly meeting as we're hearkening back to different issues and different subjects. So having said that, I would look for a motion to approve the agenda as shown.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as shown.
Katie on the motion. Second.
I'll second.
Seconded by Anna.
Okay, here we go.
What's that?
Can we remind people to mute their devices, please, as they are coming in? Or I may have to mute everybody.
You sent a picture
Okay.
or what?
Sounds good. We have a motion and a second on the floor. On a roll call vote, accepting the agenda. Larry?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
Anna? Brenda?
Yes.
Bill? For Bob?
Yeah, we already, but yes.
Yeah. Anna?
Yes.
Okay, that passes by a 6-0 vote.
I'm going to mute everybody while I'm presenting, just so that everybody knows that. Okay.
Jeff,
Yeah.
you and your administration team. You there?
Yep, I'm here. Go ahead. Can you repeat that, please?
You and the administration team have worked hard in following the guidelines of CDC, MDE, and a number of other alphabets to make sure that we have and are following the precepts and the rules and directives of all. Would that be right?
Yes, we put a lot of time into this over the past month plus.
Just as a reinforcement, your position with us, and we've talked about it before, is you are the school CEO. And we look to you for the guidance based on all these other directives that we're getting, along with the administration, to come up with a plan that you can show the board. So with that, I will let you begin your process. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I did take everybody off of mute just because I want to make sure that if board members do have questions, that they have a chance to address this, but I would like to wait until the end to get those questions after I get through presenting this information. So if other visitors could please remember to mute their devices, that would be great. All right, so looking at our draft 2 plan as we currently have it, there are some areas that were highlighted a little bit differently from what we originally sent out to the board last week. And these areas were probably more clarification on this in the highlighted areas that you saw today that came out. But for the most part, a lot of these items did not change. There was clarification into this. And so starting in scenario 1, the personal learning for all students. We want to create as much space as possible between staff and students and social distance where it can be possible, obviously with everybody in the school building in an all-in scenario. That will be a little bit tough, but we will have safety measures in place with PPE for staff and students with masks and face shields, along with hand sanitizers, and the educational process of following along with what the governor has recommended with hand washing, sanitizing, and masking up at this point is the best defense against COVID-19. In scenario 1, K through 5 students in person with added sections in grades K1, 3, 4, and 5 to lower class sizes. If you remember during last week's board meeting, we were still exploring the possibility of moving staff around and how that would affect some of the dollars that are funding those positions. At this point, we are good with those positions, and so we'll be moving those staff into those areas, K1, 3, 4, and 5. And with that, the elementary classrooms do fall under the 50% guidance for the CDC. PK, which is pre-kindergarten, will be in person Monday through Friday, and the rooms will be deep cleaned on Friday nights after the students leave for the following week. Our students in K through 12 will be in person Monday through Thursday, with Friday being a distance learning day for building deep cleaning. For the learning environment, we are still at the same area that we were last week during this time. And again, these are, even though I'm asking you guys to approve this tonight, some of these guidance items may change, especially in the area of music and Phi-Ed. So keep that in mind as we go through this. Facilities, as far as the facility cleaning, we will be following the CDC and the Department of Health guidance in the facilities, with the facilities being cleaned daily as they normally would. And also we will have more high touch areas cleaned on a more regular basis throughout the day. There has been some questions about whether we should have students helping us clean this, certain areas of the classroom, and that is not recommended at this time because of the chemicals used in general cleaning anyway. And so staff have asked if we could supply cleaning supplies in their classroom, and that is something that we could do if they wish to clean their areas more often, if that is what they wish. The facility area guidance here, planning, is the same as it has been. Plexiglass arrived today actually, and it will start being installed in the high traffic areas as recommended by IEA. I've seen questions around water fountains. The water fountains, your typical push button water fountain where it comes out into an arc won't be used. That will be disengaged, but the bottle fillers will be enabled still so students can fill their water bottles. Again, a lot of this is still the same from last week. It didn't change much in scenario 1. Athletics and activities, the Minnesota State High School League, and Reed can talk more about this later, but the Minnesota State High School League decides tomorrow about their scenarios as well and what that looks like. And so we can add that in here once they have decided on what that looks like. All right, hybrid learning model. This has been cleaned up quite a bit to lay out specifically what each of the areas in the different schools are doing for preschool. In all of these areas, the strict social distancing measures will be enforced, and the building occupancy must be at least 50% or less. And in working with IEA, this area has been met, and we feel very confident in that area, both in having the kids all in the elementary and in a hybrid all in as well. In the elementary, or I'm sorry, preschool, students will be meeting Monday through Friday as they normally would. Elementary, K through 5 students in person with an added section to grades K1, 3, 4, and 5, as I mentioned above. Students will be going Monday through Thursday in person with building deep cleaning on Fridays, and Fridays will be a win time with what I need time. And students do know what that is, and they should be able to accommodate with that. In the secondary, in grades 6 through 12, we will be split into 2 cohorts, cohort A and cohort B, alphabetically by last name, and will alternate weeks in school. And what that means is basically we will be in a block schedule, as we discussed last week, and students in cohort A will go Monday through Thursday, while cohort B students are going distance learning that week, and then the following week they will flip-flop Monday through Thursday. All students will be in distance learning on Friday for a building deep clean. And in that also, students will also be in win time at the secondary level. The learning environment area is pretty much the same as is the facilities pieces to this. Food service. In both buildings, food service, we will be using more areas than just the cafeteria. We'll be using gymnasiums and also the atrium in the high school to spread kids out. We are still counting tables to make sure we have enough tables, but we may have to either work with area churches to see if we can borrow some, or we may have to actually go out and buy some more tables. Cannon Kids, as it was during the springtime, will be closed, and the Cannon Emergency Care will be open for Tier 1 workers following the CDC and the MDH guidance to keep pod sizes down. The employee and healthcare pieces for students and staff is the same as it was last week. Not much has changed there. Scenario 3, distance learning is pretty much the same with the clarification on students in grades K through 5 in distance learning will still be in their same section and will not change up teachers if they're going distance learning. So in all cases, both in the high school and in the elementary, the kids will stay with their same teachers no matter what scenario that they are in. And we felt that this was very important for that. Kind of a quick synopsis, but really not much has changed other than the clarification of what that hybrid model does look like. Other than that, that is all I have right now for the clarification of the model.
I wonder if you could turn on the, I think we need to hear from as many parties as we possibly can this evening. Admin would be where I think we should start because they were instrumental in the planning stages of this. So I just wonder if Tim or Jen is readily available to to speak to this at all.
Sure. One of the reasons why we were talking about going to the block schedule, or wanted to go to the block schedule, is our plan is to use that schedule regardless of the scenario that we're in. So, and I think that shows in the planning there. The only thing that would change in the hybrid model would be having two cohorts of students, so half the student body split, and having them come in one half one week and one half the next week. But other than that, they would follow the same block schedule that we have, whether we're all back or we're, whatever. So it made it a pretty easy process. I think it'll make it a pretty easy process for kids to follow, because regardless of what we're doing, they're going to be on the same schedule.
There might be people outside that have questions regarding this, but if we did that, we might miss some of the questions of the general board. So I would ask the board what kind of questions they may have for Tim specifically about his capacity as high school admin. Okay, can we pop down to Jen? Jen, do you have anything for us?
No, I would love to engage in some questions. There's no good right answer for this. So I think it's pretty apparent that we need to get our elementary kids back in the building. So, and we want to be able to do that safely for staff and students. So.
I have some questions about elementary.
Mm-hmm.
If we're going to be implementing social distancing and keeping kids to their classrooms, what's the thought behind having them as an entire grade going to lunch in the same space as opposed to doing lunch in the classroom?
We're still trying to figure out if we have enough tables to be able to do our cafeteria and gymnasium kind of lunch plan in that hybrid model. The idea is that they're going to be, traveling in the building potentially with a lot of other students aside from their grade level. So quite honestly, Anna, I didn't want the kids to have to be in the classroom the entire time. So it was how can we do this safely with following recommendations to get them to eat within their with their class in an area where we are well under capacity and following those recommendations. So
I'm just curious because, when they're coming and going, they'll be wearing masks. They're not going to be wearing masks while they're eating lunch. Mm-hmm. So there is a higher level of potential of transmission, even if they are adequately spaced. I have concerns about that. And then I want to talk about the moving staff around to cover the additional teachers that we're going to need to add sections to the grade levels. So we are moving people that are currently in grant funded interventionist positions into classroom teaching roles. Is that correct?
Some of those positions.
Okay. Are we also going to be hiring? Or
no.
Do we have enough to fill? I mean, it looked like we need 5 additional teachers.
Yep. It's 5 additional teachers. We have 5 interventionists right now that will be filling those roles.
Okay. So then those interventions are not going to take place?
Not as it stood last year before COVID, where it was more of the pull-out method. Obviously, with putting those teachers back into a classroom, that's going to be very challenging to fulfill that intervention role, nor is it recommended right now by CDC to have these students be pulled out. So it's kind of a twofold, right? Like we can't have a small groups from every classroom go out. So that would be a very challenging role for them to fill. And the next best option, in my opinion, was to make class sizes smaller by adding sections.
What is the average size of the class going to be?
Well, it kind of changes per grade level. So Kindergarten at 5 sections would be 16 students, 16 to 17. First grade, 15 to 16. Second grade, there would be no added section because those class sizes are already at 16 and 17. Third and fourth grade sections would be 18 and some 19. And fifth grade would also be 18 and some 19. Our capacity limits for those classrooms are, well under, I saw 24 today, 21 would also be, 21 to 24 would be 50% capacity.
Okay, and then, and I don't know if this is a question for you or for Jeff, but if there are kids that opt into distance learning, how is that going to work for these teachers? I'm really struggling to see how a teacher is going to be able to run in-class education and distance either at the same time or.
Yeah, no, that
really,
is.
I'm really struggling to see how this is going to work.
Yeah, and I don't have the answers for that just yet, but I do know that the idea behind increasing the sections, instead of having like a distance teacher per grade levels, we really wanted that our students to have their one person, whether they're in person or they're distance or whatever that looks like. And as we kind of are very fluid with our scenarios, they would have that same person. So if I'm a teacher and I have 5 students who are distance, that's just a figure because we obviously don't know. And the other 12 of my students are in person. It really depends on the grade level. I've spoken with teachers that are like, well, Jennifer, if I'm teaching my math lesson at 9, can I have my distance kids watching that? Absolutely. So to me, that would be very, not very little kind of work involved with that because you have to set up the Zoom and all of that, but it would be able to happen live, if that makes sense. Now, I don't anticipate that happening at the younger grade levels. That's not going to be feasible, but if it happens to work out, I imagine it's going to take some time to get in a rhythm of once you get to know those students and what works for those families. The other, thing in here as well is Fridays in the elementary is win time for what I need for students, but I do anticipate that being teacher prep. So if they did miss it during the week, Monday through Thursday, I would be able to have them have their teacher prep on Friday.
Can you explain what I need means? I'm not familiar with that.
So our interventions are done currently right now during what I need time. Are you familiar with our interventions? Mm-hmm. So that's done during what I need time. So I'm sorry that you were not aware of that. But it's basically our time per grade level where the students are getting what they need. So that's the time where they might go out and get an intervention or get an intervention with the classroom teacher. But it's essentially if that student is needing to make up a test, if that student is needing some extra support in a particular area, that would be done during this time.
Was that all day on Friday or just as needed on Fridays? I'm trying to understand what this.
Yeah, so if a student needed to use this time to make up some work that they may have missed throughout the week, then they would use that time on Fridays. That could mean that they have a separate interaction with the teacher. It could mean that the teacher was holding a Zoom for some of the class that might need that. It wouldn't be all of that, and I don't anticipate it being a full day.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
I think it should be mentioned also that families do have a choice no matter what scenario we are in to keep their kids home and distance learn at any time. If we're all in, parents have that choice, or even if we go into a hybrid, parents have that choice in this model or in the 3 models as well. So I saw that as one of the questions today as well.
I have a question on that one. So as far as distance learning, parents can, what's the reasoning behind them not being able to, or us not being able to ask them to choose one or the other? Like whether they're going to follow the in and out plan or whether they're going to distance learn for like a whole semester? Is there a reasoning behind not being able to ask them what's like for a commitment?
Yeah, and that's a good point as well. We are going to be surveying parents once the board approves the 3 learning plans here. We want to go out and survey parents to see what their intent is, almost like an enrollment type of survey, to see what their intention is to bring their kids into school or to keep them home for distance learning, because that'll help us further plan the rest of the year with class sizes.
If you do see an influx in people wanting to keep kids home, will you consider looking into like having just distant learning teachers, like specific teachers that are just for distance learning, or is that not even a consideration?
In the high school, it becomes a licensure issue, and I think Jen
Sure.
just explained the elementary issue of, as we go in and out of these different scenarios, it becomes very tough to have one teacher be a distance learning teacher from that aspect in this size of school.
Okay.
Was that?
Yep. No, that's, I was just curious of, you know, if that was at all thought about with different situations, maybe for teachers that have health concerns or anything like that, for us to be able to fulfill their roles.
Sure.
Other questions for the admin team?
Mr. Hodges, Larry. So are teachers expected for the A and B schedules? Are they going to teach the same lessons on the same week, regardless if they're there or not, or do they have to do the same lesson plans back-to-back weeks?
No, the idea is that we will be streaming their instruction, whether students are in-house or out, and kids will follow that schedule. So they'll have 4 classes if they're home on distance learning for a particular week, following along with the instructor. That way we don't only cover half of the content that we normally do. We'll be able to get through as much as we normally do. So, and that's the other reason, one of the other benefits of having the Friday, besides having time for Dave's staff to clean, is to have that Friday what I need time, so students can have individual check-ins with staff that they need to touch base with about any lessons so they don't get behind.
On that same question, Mr. Hodges, would, like, when the kids are in attending from home on their weeks to be home, will they be able to interact in the classroom, or is it just strictly they can just watch it?
What we had planned on right now is to use Zoom. So that'll be a little bit difficult for an instructor to do while they're teaching. But having that block of time, you know, a teacher's not going to do a lecture for, you know, a whole 90 minutes.
Right.
So they should have some time to be able to touch base with teachers if there are any questions or anything as we go along as well.
Okay.
And you know, another benefit of this too is that, you know, staff will have a 90-minute prep every day. So there's going to be a lot of time that staff will have to be able to, you know, kids will be able to touch base with teachers during their prep time. And that's something that each staff member can let kids know, you know, when they're available daily for questions, as well as Friday.
And about that too, I do have a question about that. Or do you feel like, and this for you, Jen, too, do you feel like that you have enough time to prepare to have a safe start for September 8th? Or do you feel like you could use some extra time, some extra days for planning and getting ready to do this and roll this out safely for everybody?
Part of the plan for my building, and I'm not sure, I guess I don't know whether we talked about it for elementary staff or not, but was to provide a couple of days of additional professional development that teachers can use if they choose to, so that they can plan specifically for block scheduling. It's a different scheduling model. It requires, you know, some different types of lesson planning, but I kind of feel like we're making these decisions ahead of time enough that staff can start with that. And they have more prep time built into this block schedule, not only during every day, but also with Friday. They'll have some time to prepare as well. So I kind of feel like we should be in pretty good place for that. We haven't really talked much about what workshop week is going to be like when staff come back on the 31st and 1st and 2nd of September. But my guess is that the majority of that time is going to be given to staff to prepare for block scheduling in my building, plus the normal kinds of things. But, you know, some of the stuff that we normally do, we'll just end up not doing that this year to give staff more time to prepare.
Yep. And
I have a
I
question.
would agree with Tim as well. And yes, staff in my building have been given the option for the extra 2 days of planning. And I do anticipate workshops being a lot different this year, with the focus being 100% for teachers getting ready.
Brenda,
I was just going to ask a question, yeah. So is it basically for preschool and K-5, it would be the same whether it's the full in-person or the hybrid, because they would be, K-5 would be Monday through Thursday with Fridays. And adding the section, we do that for both scenarios.
Yes,
And they would be below 50% capacity in both scenarios.
that's
But
correct.
the main change would be the high school having the A-B alternating schedule. So in the full in-person option or scenario 1 for high school, be regular class sizes, or would there be any?
So yeah, all of our classrooms are fit within all of our class sizes will fit within the guidelines that were given for in-person learning. With that being said, you know, we're not going to be able to, with everybody's in a classroom, we're not going to be able to keep 6 feet separation between every student. So that's where the mask piece comes in. We should be able to meet the 3.5 feet with a mask guideline that we were given.
Okay.
What
And
is
that does that require 50% capacity on scenario 1 or not? That's only scenario 2.
No, scenario 1 is everybody back in school.
Yeah.
But with that being said, we know that we're going to have a significant number of students whose parents are going to choose to have them distance learning. So, you know, a teacher may look at their class list and it may have 25 students in it, but we might have 8 kids that are home. So what we have to deal with in class is only, you know, 17 kids. So.
Okay.
And we'll know more about that after we get our survey results back from parents.
Okay.
And did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, what is the occupancy for both buildings?
Total or by classroom? Because by classroom, it depends on square footage of the actual room.
I was just looking for total, because I'm curious.
Well, I think I saw something on the list that we got district-wide that is our total occupancy is around 1,500 students, and we don't have, you know, that's obviously far over what we have.
Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah.
I do have a question because I don't see it in any of these scenarios about, like, for elementary school, are you going to be allowing playground time, like recess, or are you going to stagger it so it's less kids out there? Or, I saw that there were some guidelines when I was reading through the MDE guidelines and everything that you could have it, but I was just wondering, since you didn't have it on here, what
Did you say you saw in the guidance?
I saw that they said that you could stagger times, and there were just different, you know, guidances around how to clean it and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So that it was allowed in the in-person. I was just wondering if that was something you were considering, or how you were just going to use PE time as their.
Nope. The idea is that they would still have recess time. What I'm looking at right now is breaking up the playground area into spots and have that be a rotational basis, if that makes sense. So,
yeah, sure.
You know, for example, we have a playground and we have a blacktop. So maybe those 2 areas would be set aside for a grade level, right?
Okay.
And then we have another green space, and we've got, you know, the Gaga pit. And so just kind of breaking it up and having that be where they're at, not having overlapping time like we would normally have pre-COVID.
Sure. Okay.
And then of course the increase of sanitation on before and after, and
washing
then again,
their hands, like it mentioned, making sure they wash their hands when they're done playing outside and
yep.
those kinds of things.
Yep. And then the high traffic areas on, whether that be any equipment that's being used, monkey bars, that type of.
Okay.
Yeah, we want them outside.
Yes, I figured.
Since we're surveying parents, is there anything that we're doing for our teachers, our educators? Are we surveying them? Are we or have we been doing that all the way along?
Yes, there will be a survey sent out as well for educators. Both of those will probably go out on Wednesday, I'm guessing.
Mm-hmm.
And we will promote those through social media and our website and an email out to parents as well.
Have any of our teachers been involved in drafting these plans?
We've engaged with the union on these, and also the teachers have been looking at these through their PLCs and giving feedback on different areas.
Okay. Other questions for the admin team?
Will attendance for high school be taken during those AB for the remote learning, or it'll be just a general check-in like they did last year?
We'll likely take attendance during that time, just because we're expecting kids to follow their normal schedule. And Infinite Campus has some new tools to allow staff to do that. And we can set the kids' schedule in Infinite Campus, whether they're distance learning for a week or in class for a week, and teachers will see that as a separated list each week based on the calendar.
So Jen, it's Bill. You spoke to a lot of the conditions for the elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
And I think taking the plan and putting it in place is pretty much where probably teachers and students and parents are really trying to figure out what does a day look like.
Mm-hmm.
And you spoke to a lot of it. And so my concern is maybe the special ed students and the intervention time. And so, you touched on PE, you touched on the lunchroom. Can you kind of maybe take a day, drop off transportation to the end of the day and kind of what that would look like? Because I think that's really where the concerns are for parents and everyone else.
Yeah. Beginning of the day, as you know, maybe you don't know, but drop-off procedures are pretty intense at the elementary. And I imagine they will be a lot more intense because, I'm assuming we're talking about the hybrid right now, because I don't think you want to know the typical day-to-day when in scenario one, because you kind of already know that. But so there's a lot to be worked out with the drop-off procedures. But once a student, if they are eating breakfast, let's say, breakfast is a grab and go, and they would grab their breakfast, or it would already be waiting for them at their classroom, to which they would eat that in their classroom. And their day would be no different than it normally would be, aside from, they would get their belongings and take their coat off at their locker or cubby, I guess, hook per se, and head on into class. Now, they might start their morning meeting. Are they going to be gathered around a carpet shoulder to shoulder? Nope, that will look a little different. They might, head on to a specialist, in which the specialist teacher on a nice weather day is going to come to their classroom and then take that classroom of students outside. Or if it's not a good weather day, they would have, let's say, art in the classroom during that time. That would be the teacher's prep. So the teacher would need to prep elsewhere during that time, or they could remain in the class. After that, they might go on to a core class. And, if my core class I'm teaching is math to my group, I might see if there's any of my at-home students who are wanting to jump on during that whole group instruction. See if they have any questions. This sounds way easier, than I'm It sounds easy. It's not going to be easy by any means. At that point, I would say, you know, the class might say farewell to their distance learners, and it might be time for lunch. And if we can make lunchroom happen in a different location, great. It might be in their classrooms, or they would go and have lunch in a different location. You know, the idea that Fayette is outside is a great idea aside from bad weather. So we might be looking at alternate options within the classroom. So, and then as far as, you know, their other specialists go, that would all be done in the classroom unless it's a nice day. And then as far as drop-off procedures go, that will be staggered released, starting with our buses by route and then by parent pickup in some capacity. There's going to be, the other thing that's kind of a big deal is a one-way traffic pattern. So if you're, I was in the building today, students are pretty familiar, those that are there right now, a couple handfuls of them during Canon Kids are pretty aware of what that pattern looks like. There's arrows on the floor to kind of show them. We certainly don't want to be going both directions in one hallway. That is required. It's a high recommendation by CDC right now.
Yeah. So can you speak to the paras and the special ed programs?
Sure. So traditionally, if, let's say we have a first grade reading group that are special ed students, typically they would leave the classroom or multiple classrooms and go to one room. I'm working with our Sharon Noble and the SPED right now to kind of figure out making sure we're meeting students' needs and obviously safety of teachers and staff as well. So in that event, if we can class place kiddos so that the teacher, the SPED teacher would push into the classroom rather than going out, that's not always going to work. So I have students who spend a majority of their day not in the mainstream classroom. It would not be wise of us to try and have them in the mainstream classroom, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So as far as a para goes, I would imagine that on any given day before COVID, I could have a para that spends his or her time in 10 to 12 different classrooms. We're obviously going to need to limit that, right? We can't have the 10 to 12 classrooms. Obviously, our specialist teachers are going to be. And the idea behind this is to limit it as much as possible. And because it's not really an option at this point to have specialists teach remotely. So I'm working with Sharon on that to try and figure out how we minimize their travel.
I can address that a little bit, Bill, just to let you know that all of the special education case managers will be reaching out to every student on their caseload and rewriting the service plans for those kids. So all of the parents will be heard from before school starts.
Thank you.
Karen, do you?
Bill, did that answer your question?
Yes, yes. I think, you know, just taking it from paper to, you know, kind of visual is important. And I think at the elementary school with the reduced class sizes and then the idea that we have kids that are going to be distance learning and what that's really going to look like and how they're going to fit all of it together is important. So thank you.
Yeah.
Can I add one thing about the
Yeah.
distance learning and the fluidity that I think maybe Anna asked about it. You know, there could be cases where students need to quarantine for 14 days. So they could be distance learning during that time, but come back into that classroom. So we're not necessarily saying that a parent is saying, I want to distance my student to distance learn for a quarter or something like that. But there might be times where they're out. And so to have that fluidity of being able to come back into the classroom, I think is an important thing.
And in that case, we, you know, if we did have a grade level distance teacher, the classroom teacher that is in school is going to have to be responsible for that child anyway, because it's not like they would automatically go to the distance.
Right.
That would just be, I don't think that would be doing what's best for kids.
No.
I think it's also important to keep in mind that the whole plan really is fluid. Once you submit it to the state a week before school starts, that doesn't mean it's concrete at that point either, based upon testing. And so we're still going to be making adjustments as the school year goes on.
And just when I think I figured it out, there's like 4 other different scenario options, and then that entire plan kind of backfires. So
I have another question. What are we doing to educate like parents about COVID symptoms, sending the kids healthy to school, making sure that they're doing their part to keep this whole thing able to keep going? Mask wearing, hand hygiene, like do we have anything that we're doing to educate the parents and keep them in the loop of what they should be keeping their kids home with and everything?
Yeah,
I was hoping
we'll be
that
communicating all of that with parents.
Hmm.
And there are plenty of resources available for us to be able to send out to parents regarding those things.
Okay.
And you know, a lot of that stuff we're required to do. Not only, you know, we have to have some of that for parents, but we have to have it for kids too.
Yep.
So we'll end up spending a lot of time at the beginning of the year going over hand hygiene, mask wearing, you know, properly using any of the PPE that is available for students. You know, there will be face masks and all kinds of stuff that'll be in the building. So one of the things that we have to do, regardless of the scenario we're under, is educate our students on those things and remind them about using them.
Yeah, a lot of the educational pieces are going to be the same that's out there right now in the state of Minnesota from the governor's office. Everywhere you look, with masking up and washing hands and social distancing. And so it'll be pretty simple, straightforward educational pieces that we can pass out to parents and to students right away.
Okay.
I was hoping that we would get Pam to speak about some of the health items as we're talking to department heads here, but I'll save her. Hopefully she's on by then.
Yeah, Pam is on here. I've seen her.
Pam?
Hello, I'm here. Can
Hi.
you hear me?
Would you plug into us, Pam, as far as your job and your opportunities and concerns here as well?
Right. One of the things we'll have that'll be different this year is we'll have an isolation room for students that present with COVID symptoms during the school day. So that will have them in a separate space from our well students that come to the nurse's office for other reasons. So that's one of the things we'll be doing. We'll be, as part of the parent education that you guys were talking about, we'll highly encourage parents to check where their kids are at that morning. It's very important that, you know, if they have any symptoms whatsoever consistent with COVID, that they need to stay home for the day. That's something that, you know, if a child doesn't feel well, they've always been encouraged to keep them home. This year it becomes even more important that they do that. And we'll also work with MDH and public health if somebody has a positive test. So I took a contact tracing class this summer, and we'll be working with them if somebody does present with a positive test.
You feel pretty comfortable you've got a process in place as far as recognizing symptoms, and you do have that isolation room? You feeling good?
I do. MDH has put out a decision tree for childcare and schools, and we've been using it this summer in the childcare, so we're getting pretty comfortable with it. I think, like Jennifer said, things are always changing a little bit, and I know right now they're working on redoing that decision tree, making it up to date with the most current knowledge about COVID. So,
any questions for Pam?
Has there been any consideration about doing temperature checks as students and staff are entering the buildings?
You know, that was something on the radar kind of at the beginning, but I think there were a lot of concerns about what that would look like if you have several hundred kids lined up outside waiting, you know, for their temperature checked. Social distancing would be difficult. And just our weather in Minnesota, you know, in a couple months, it's a lot cooler in the morning. So that maybe is not the most practical option. The CDC did put out some guidelines again, I think it was July 22nd, and they did not recommend doing that temp check on everybody as they come in the door. They really encourage that parents do that at home.
I think the nice piece about what the governor released last Thursday is it's really, since it is community by community or district by district, it really puts a team mentality into what we're doing here, that we need to make sure that we have everyone involved in making sure that we tackle this together, that it's just not on one entity to tackle it. And so it's important that we have that teamwork, I guess, if you will, from the at-home along with the school district, and then also the working with the different partners at the state and helping tackle this.
I was looking at the guidelines on how we move from one scenario to another. And so are those put out weekly, or are they, it said something about bi-weekly. Is that only every 2 weeks that they update those numbers? Or how do you move from one scenario to another?
We haven't got a lot of guidance in that area yet. I called MDH last Friday and I got passed around to 3 different people before I found somebody that said, I'm going to have somebody call you back on Monday. And basically what they told me is that you need to work with your Southeast Service Cooperative, who will be our regional center that we call when we have an outbreak or a case here at school. And they will lend us the support in dealing with that and how to deal with that. But right now, those centers aren't set up at all. But we do need to create a COVID advisory council, I guess, if you want to call it, or an incident command, I think was the term that the governor used on Thursday. And so we'll be looking to ask the board to do that, to have a member from the board come on for that. But that advisory council will look at biweekly data. They call it incubation periods is the term I've heard. And Pam, please step in if I get out of my lane here a little bit. But it's my understanding that there's data sets that come out every 2 weeks, and that gives us our number that we work off of. And that number falls within the category where we should be in the different learning models, if you will.
Right.
And so there's, from last Friday, July 31st, there are 2 incubation periods left before we start school. And so that if I'm counting my weeks correctly, I believe the second incubation period is on August 28th.
That sounds right.
So that'll be the one that decides what scenario we're in.
That is correct. So the parents that are looking for us to make that decision on what we're going to be doing, we really won't know for sure until August 28th.
Okay.
I wonder if we can speak to how we're going to get our children to school, and that would come under Andy SafeLink. And I think there's concerns from parents as to getting kids there and such. So I was hoping that Andy was on board here.
I saw Andy in earlier.
I'm here.
Andy?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Andy, this is one of the key ingredients for us, I guess, is getting our kids to school and home again, and how we're going to achieve that. So
experiences are safe and as comfortable as possible. All of our employees will be wearing masks, social distancing, and implementing new protocols.
Somebody has something on.
Yep.
Or originalmattress.com to experience the all-that difference.
I remind people to please mute your line with the news playing in the background or whatever that was. Thank you.
Okay. Andy, you've got the floor here.
Yes, it is going to be, it's definitely going to be tough to keep everyone together there. But in the first scenario, it just depends on how many people really ride the bus. You know, I think we're going to be trying to get as many people, right, Jeff, as we can to bring their kids in.
Yeah, that will be a part of our question, and I believe it's on this document also. We're going to be asking parents, if at all possible, if they can bring their child to and pick their children up from school as a way of helping us reduce the number of kids on the bus.
So we have, everyone will have to wear a mask, and that'll be part of this training we're going to be sending home to the parents. So kids get used to wearing their masks. It's going to be a big deal that the parents help us with the kids learning how important it is to wear their mask and to keep them on when they're together inside that small area. As far as cleaning, we already have the cleaner and the sprayers and stuff, and every day after morning routes, we're going to spray the buses down to kill anything that's in there. And then after the PM route at night, we will spray every bus down again. So I guess the most important thing is that we get the kids to wear their masks and to keep our bus drivers safe.
Always one of the questions I would have, and this is probably for educators as well, or for administrators, is who polices that mask thing? Is that up to the bus driver to stop the bus and require the kids, or is that something to be worked out?
Well, the bus driver has to concentrate on driving. You know, it's hard to keep just the discipline in line for a bus driver, let alone trying to do the math. So
yeah,
I guess our meeting tomorrow, we're going to talk a lot about that tomorrow in our next meeting, on how we're going to try and accomplish this. But obviously the driver can't stop the bus. You know, that's an accident waiting to happen as far as, you know, an actual accident.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we're going to try to figure that out tomorrow.
I think that's part of the educational pieces with the parents and the children to help them understand the importance of wearing masks and why we're wearing masks.
Sure. Will we have problems? Maybe it's unforeseen with parents not being able to take their kids to school, and now the bus is too full. Are we going to have a second route available?
I think those are the things that we need to look at once we get the surveys back, to see where we need to readjust routes and have them maybe not ride the regular bus that they've ridden for years, but to readjust some of those things.
Sure. Other questions for Andy? Okay, thank you, Andy. Facility Dave, are you around?
Yeah, I'm here.
What challenges would be presented to you on a normal school day with each of these options?
Well, I just think we're going to have to adapt, work with all department heads on whatever scenario we go into. It's just going to be kind of a new experience, and we'll have to adapt, adjust, and do whatever we need to, working with all department heads. It's going to be new, but you know, we'll get it done.
Any challenges that you see that are unique to the situation, or is that too many to even count?
Yeah, I mean, I really don't know yet. I mean, it really depends on the scenario. It depends on lunches. It depends on each individual building, staffing. So, I mean, really, there's just so many challenges ahead. I think once the surveys come back and once we have more information in the near future, that's going to help clarify some of the issues we might have.
Are you and your staff ready for day one regardless, do you feel?
Yeah, we're ready for day one regardless. I'm going to tell you right now, the school buildings are the cleanest, most sanitized buildings in the area, so we're ready.
Questions for Dave? Is Reed on here?
Yeah, I saw him earlier.
Yep, I'm here.
Hi, Reed. Just kind of checking in to see your area of concerns or how you're approaching things, and you'll know more tomorrow, I would guess, huh?
Yeah, the high school league has a board of directors meeting tomorrow that they will, they're going to discuss and hopefully make a decision on one of 4 options. We've been having weekly, calling lead network Zoom meetings every Thursday for half-hour meetings. And they haven't really shared a lot during most of that time, which has unfortunately let everybody just speculate as to what's going to happen. But this last Thursday, they did finally share the 4 options that they were going to discuss in their workforce meeting today and hopefully vote on tomorrow. And those 4 options are: first, that traditional participation in its traditional season, so normal as is. A second option is a 20 to 30% decrease in reduction of that season. A third option would be practice only. I don't see that being a very popular option. And then that last option is if we can't have something and moving it to another season. There's been a lot of speculation that they're going to take the fall, move it to the spring, and the spring, move it to the fall. High school league's been rather adamant that they don't want to do that. They'd rather look at activity by activity only. Obviously, the major concern there is that our spring sports could get burned twice now. So that was a major factor in not wanting to go that route. There's been a lot of speculation of maybe pushing back start times, and because as you know, we're 0 week for football, and that's supposed to start a week from today. So, and then all of our remaining fall sports are supposed to start the week after on the 17th. We'll have to look and see what happens. There's been some speculation amongst ADs about maybe a staggered start, maybe our low risk activities such as cross country and tennis would maybe start maybe August 17th, and then you could go to maybe volleyball down the road, and then your football and your soccer, more of your higher risks down the road. That's a possibility. We'll have to see what they say. A lot of it is their big push is to be equitable, which is obvious, but with the local control rule, some doing distance learning, some doing hybrid, what is that going to look like for activities? So we'll have to see kind of what parameters they give us tomorrow, and then it'll be a mad scramble to make it happen.
Hey, Reed, this is Bill.
Yep.
Has there been any discussion around spectators? I mean, we have professional sports starting without spectators, so I thought I'd ask the question.
That's a lot of the questions in those weekly meetings. We're in a Zoom and the chat. You know, most of us follow the chat more than the screen, and that's been a hot topic question that has not been answered at this point in time. So hopefully we get some guidance on that tomorrow. And it could be tomorrow, could just be here's that beginning framework, and then as things get closer to it, how things progress and what does that look like.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anything on the community ed front?
Only the fact that right now we're waiting to hear back from all of our fall instructors. Some want to do online only. Some are waiting to hear what we do for school. Some want to just kind of wait till the spring. So we're going to wait and see there. In talking with Afton today, we're going to hold off on our fall booklet till mid to end of the month. And then depending on our offerings as well, we might not do a print schedule, a print brochure this fall. We might just blast something out through Infinite and then maybe send out a mailing or put up listings somewhere else. But we'll just have to see in regards to what that looks like. But other than that, that's about it at this point in time.
Any other questions for Reed? Thank you for your time.
Yep, thank you.
Food service, anything to add here, Alicia? Do you have any concerns or?
As of right now, we have no concerns. We will continue to follow guidance given to us not only by the Minnesota Department of Education, but the Minnesota Department of Health as well to make sure we are compliant and safe. We will continue taking measures of sanitation that we have always done, as well as stepping that up. But other than that, until we have been giving final guidance, a lot of these questions can't really be answered until we can all come together and work on a solution.
Do you feel prepared for the beginning of the school year?
I do feel prepared, but obviously until we have a final answer, a lot of these questions will be up in the air.
Sure. Any questions for Alicia? I thought we would look for some input from our finance man, Josh. I don't know if you're prepared at all, but certainly these changes affect us financially. And Jeff, you can input as well, but hearing from Josh, has this created a financial issue for the district?
We've talked a few times, whether it be during preliminary budget time or finalizing the prior fiscal year's budget. Just the lack of revenue, missing out on 3 or 4 months of schooling with the childcare being the biggest portion, the Canada Kids revenue. You know, there's a technology portion, obviously, to try to get a device into all kids' hands, as well as making sure that each family has a connection available so they can do the distance learning from their home on a reliable device and with a connection. And we've had some great donors from the community come forward to give funds, as well as funds from the state in the form of grant and the ESSER and the GEAR funds that will help offset a lot of those costs. The potential going forward is just going to be what kind of scenario we are in school. There's going to be a lot more cost in PPE. We've already bought face masks for all students and staff in the district. Extra cleaning supplies, you know, just those sorts of things to make sure that when staff and students are entering the building and interacting within the building, they're as safe as we can make it. On top of that, you know, it's going to be a matter of just what it looks like in terms of transportation. Are there extra routes? Are we looking at, you know, extra staff in order to be able to keep when, say, either a staff member or a student is out and we've got to fill in that classroom. So there's a distance learning and a classroom section at the same time. Those are all kind of unknowns because we won't really know until we get into those items. And they'll all come with a cost. And it's hard to put an exact dollar sign on that. In terms of where we are coming at into this fiscal year budget-wise, we came pretty well balanced at the end of fiscal year 20, which is kind of what we had planned when we approved that budget a year or so ago. We did make some reductions coming into this fiscal year that will help us have maybe a little bit of a cushion there, but the goal there was obviously to help build the fund balance more towards that 8 to 12% goal or policy that we have within our policy manual. But it does put us in a spot where if needed, some of those funds, we may be able to have a little bit of room there to work with, and maybe not as dire a position had we come into this year trying to balance that budget instead of coming in with those reductions. But again, just like we've talked all night with everyone that's in the group, it really is a matter of what we're able to get done on that first day of school. How much is going to be in class, how much is going to be distance, how much we have to kind of account for all the other variables that are going to go along with it in order to keep that separation or that social distance or whatever we need to do to try to do our best to make it as safe as environment as possible and as clean and sanitary as environment as possible.
Questions for Josh? Okay, thanks for your time, Josh.
You bet.
Jeff, do you have anything to add?
No, what I'm asking the board to do is to approve these 3 options for tonight so we can continue planning. As I mentioned before, we won't have a final decision on what we're doing until after a couple more incubation periods and we get our data with that. It's also good for the board to know that we can request to move either up or down in those MDE scenarios, but we do have to go through a consultation process, which they haven't got set up yet. As of right now, Cannon Falls area schools is spread over 2 different counties, with Goodhue County being one and Dakota County being another. And the state has told me that we do have to use the higher number at this point in making a decision. Now, if we want to have a consultation to try to move into a different scenario, we can certainly do that, but we do need to get that COVID advisory committee together, made up of board members, union reps, and admin staff and other staff in the district, along with parents and students, if we could find some students to sit in on that. That group ideally would be looking at this data that we would get bi-weekly, as I understand it at this point. And so once we get this approved, we can start communicating this out to families. Here's our plans that we would move in and out of. And obviously there's going to be more detail that needs to be added, but we can certainly get that communication, starting the process to get that out.
Okay,
Jeff,
so
I think you were going to ask the question as far as the counties, if it was on the borders or students. Have you been able to get an answer on that one?
That's what I asked last Friday with MDH, and I got the long pause on the phone, and they wanted to give me somebody to call me back on Monday. And what I'm hearing is that we need to work with our regional center, which is the Southeast Service Co-op. And in talking to the executive director today, that hasn't been set up through the Southeast Service Co-op or any other co-ops in the state yet. So they're still developing what that looks like. We will need to work with our incident command team, as the governor said, which I would like to call a COVID advisory or just advisory group for the district that we need to put together in relationship with county health officials and state health officials, because we may have a special circumstance here with where we're positioned in Goodhue County, being closer to the metro, but still within Goodhue County. I think there's some options that the board could definitely look at as far as a direction that we could go. There's also the possibility of just following along with taking that and being in the plan of the higher number as well.
Sure. So are you looking for board member input at this point for membership?
Yeah, we do need to have a board member set in on this COVID advisory, and then I can get our admin staff, and I'll talk to the different bargaining units in the district about who they would like to represent them, and then we'll start looking for parents also. So we'll probably try to put this together hopefully by midweek to late week and get that moving.
The that incident command team, I feel like we should have somebody with experience in this endeavor, and I think Larry would be the best choice for us, because he's got experience with his employment with both COVID and health and safety issues. I think he's told me before. So I think he's the best choice for us. And pursuant to naming committees, both ad hoc and sitting commission or committees, it's incumbent on us to get the best person with the best credentials, and that would be Larry. So I've reached out to him already because it is a committee, and he said he could work it into his schedule. And again, we need somebody with that type of experience. So Bill, if you would want to back that up or be an alternate, that would be great.
Yeah, that's fine.
Then we've
Makes
got
sense to me.
kids within the district, and also a past, your kids are out of school is what I'm trying to say. So having said that, I think under new business, we would be looking for an okay from the board, subject to if your questions have been answered. Certainly we can motion and second and then open this up for more discussions, but let's go that route, because we can discuss this forever and then have a motion, a second, and then be forced to rediscuss when I think we can at least motion and second and open it up. So at this point in time, we'd be looking for a motion to approve. Jeff, let me know if the 3 scenarios without indicating which one we would move to, but just the 3 scenarios that have been offered. Correct?
Yeah, we're not deciding on how we're starting school currently. We're just approving the 3 scenarios that we would be able to move in and out of.
And the 3
like somebody had mentioned before earlier, these could change also with specifics like everything else. So, but at least give us a direction here.
Sure.
I'll make the motion to approve the 3 scenarios.
Brenda,
I'll second.
Who seconds, Bill?
Yeah.
Okay. Other discussion. Folks, do you have any other questions for any of the team, admin or other, that maybe didn't get resolved in your mind that you'd just like to run through again?
I have a couple of questions. Thinking about incoming students, specifically kindergartners, and then transitioning students or 5th graders that are going to 6th grade that would normally have an orientation period of some kind to get adjusted to a new situation. Are there any plans in place for that?
I can speak to the 6th grade orientation. I've been kind of waiting to do anything with that, just to find out exactly what our plan was going to be and how we were going to start school. I'm planning on doing some type of thing, and I don't know if I'll do a live Zoom, just because of the restrictions of how many people can be involved in the Zoom at a time, or whether I do a screencast of some sort to push out to 6th grade parents and students. But obviously, the way we normally do our orientation would not work because we have all of the 6th graders coming back together as a group, and a lot of their activities that they do are group activities. So some of those things that we would normally do with 6th grade kids are probably going to be things that become part of our, beginning of the year curriculum with those kiddos in classes. There will be some differences normally anyway, lockers being one of those things. Kids will be assigned lockers, but we're going to ask that kids carry their daily, books and things like that with them to class in a backpack. Locker would be just for the beginning of the day and end of the day, as opposed to in between class periods, just to limit the number of students in the hallways. So that'll be a big deal. That's probably the biggest challenge for 6th graders coming into the middle school, high school is navigating lockers and combinations. But our 6th grade teachers are, they do that all the time anyway. It's not anything new. And again, that orientation piece is going to end up being virtual. I just don't have an answer exactly whether it's going to be a live virtual thing or whether it's going to be more of a, here it is, and it's going to be like a narrated kind of slideshow or something.
Okay. Thank you.
Did you have 2 questions, Anna? Was there another one there or not?
Kindergarten.
About kindergarten.
Yep.
Yeah. So for those that aren't aware of how kindergarten typically kind of starts off, it will follow that same plan. What that looks like is only half of the class will be present on that Thursday, the 10th, and then the other half. So kindergarten students wouldn't fully be within their class until that following Monday. So we usually like to have kind of teach the expectations, build that community in a smaller group. So they'll be in that 7 to 8 range of students for the first 2 days. It is dependent on what scenario we're in. I will be honest with you, I don't think it's in our best interest to hold Bomber Day conferences in person. I think that.
Do you think they'll still be held?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Other questions for anyone in particular?
Jeff, this is Larry. Are there accountability plans in place for students that decide they don't want to follow the recommendations or multiple times they just, don't wear the mask? Do we have escalation plans, and, is it zero tolerance? I guess, whatever it is.
Yeah, and obviously there's different scenarios where people have medical exemptions. We got to talk through all of that to make sure that we're clear on what is expected. With the governor's mask order in place, we will need to have masks or other PPE available for those kids as options as needed, with shields or whatever that looks like, but they need to have something in place for them. And I guess I would have the principals and I are going to talk more tomorrow, specifically during our cabinet meeting, about some of those types of disciplinary items, I guess, if you will, if students aren't following along. But a lot of it is starting with the educational piece and then progressing from there.
Anyone else? Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor for consideration to approve the admin team moving forward with these three scenarios and doing further research with the incident command team to be named. So a yes vote would be in support of moving forward. Larry?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Brenda?
Yep.
Bob? Yes. That passes by a 6-0 vote. Jeff, what would be your next move here, both from a standpoint of MOE communication and convening?
After our cabinet meeting tomorrow, we are planning on probably having a pretty long cabinet meeting to detail those situations out, turn this document into what I call a pretty document to send out to the district residents and communicate that out about what our plans are. We would also have written communication on the high level items of what we're asking parents for in this, and also have them look forward to getting a survey. I would hope by Wednesday, if not late tomorrow. So basically, we're turning this into an action plan that we will start communicating out with families, and then having them understand that we aren't really going to know how we're starting school until we get through a couple more incubation periods and see where our data takes us for the community. And also remind them that we're all in this together, that we all need to keep working toward that common goal of getting back to normal.
Any questions for Jeff?
I just have one more thing I wanted to say to the teachers out there and all the admin and everything, that this has got to be just the most highly emotional time as you move into the COVID essential worker role, and changing all the roles that a teacher does as you've ever seen it. And so I just want to thank you guys in advance for all the hard work that this year is going to bring, and just know that we see you and we appreciate all the hard work you're doing. So thank you.
Well said.
Yes, thanks for saying that, Kitty.
Okay, so are we to convene or set up a special meeting subsequent to this one? Or
We can certainly talk about having another special meeting prior to our regular meeting. If you want an update on kind of where we are at with planning, it may not be a bad idea. If you want to have another one, maybe we could have it either next Monday or on the 17th, I guess. The 24th is our regular school board meeting.
what do you think, people?
Did we skip public input? Was there anybody that wanted to speak? Because we jumped from Jeff's presentation right into voting. So I'm just wondering if we were going to do public input, and if there was anybody that had indicated that they wanted a chance to speak.
You know, when it comes to public input, we always have it at our regularly scheduled meetings. I'm not sure if it's on here because
It is.
Or not.
It's on the agenda.
Yeah, I see it on the agenda. Lori, my only concern would be is that we have so many people that want to speak that we could sometimes these get redundant in nature. I'm certainly not shutting anybody down. But this was a special meeting designed for us to come to some conclusions and ask a lot of people a lot of questions.
Right, and you could limit it to the 3 minutes.
Sure, if that's something we should do, then I'm all for it. So before we end our meeting today, let's hear from the public, and we'll move on from there. Probably 3 minutes might be a bit much, especially if we have a variety or a great number of people, but certainly we can get input from them. I wasn't sure if that was something that's on our regular meetings, but not on our specials or not. So at this point in time, if anybody wishes to speak to the district, you can certainly do so. Please recognize yourself by name so that we can document who's been speaking to us. So would anybody like input?
Rob Stosky here.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, I just wanted to thank the board and the admin team for the work that they've done on coming with these plans. And we did do a survey of the CFEA teachers. It seems like our #1 priority concern is the safety of students and staff. Big questions we have, how are we going to implement these new educational practices, unlike we've ever done before in this scenario. Another big question was what happens if we test positive or family members test positive, and the availability of substitutes. And I have shared all these with Jeff too, but I just wanted to make you guys aware of that and let you know that we appreciate the work you're doing as well. I hope that's not 3 minutes.
Thanks, Rob. Anyone else wish to speak? Okay.
I would like to say something. My name's Penny Robinson.
Okay, Penny. I'm just writing your name down here, excuse me. Okay.
I just think in all this, you really need to take into consideration the special ed kids who are high risk but really need to be into school. And I have a kid who's in the high school setting, and I understand the block situation, and he is in classrooms, but wouldn't necessarily be able to stay in that classroom for an hour and a half, but also needs all those safety precautions like masks, social distancing, all of that. And distant learning was not good for him. It ramped up other medical issues for him. That wasn't good. So I think those things need, that we really need to take those special ed kids into consideration too.
Thank you. The process of public input is to hear concerns from people, as Penny has shown us, but not necessarily to comment on them. We take it back for discussion, and at this point, the admin team can certainly speak to your concerns. So who else would like to speak to the district? Okay, that closes the public input section of things. Thanks for bringing that to my attention, Anna. I messed that up.
Welcome.
So I think we've covered what's on our agenda for this evening. So if anybody has any last second things to say, now is your time, board members. Other than that, I would look for a motion to adjourn unless somebody has some input. Okay, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Katie. Second?
Second.
I'll second.
You got beat, Larry. Anna seconded it.
Always faster.
Yeah. So we have a motion and a second for adjournment. A yes vote would be to affirm that. Bob, yes. Brenda? Anna?
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Larry?
Yes.
I was muted. This is Brenda. Yes, I'll vote yes for that.
Yes. So that passes by a 6-0 vote. Thank you for everyone. Thank you for your input. Department heads, you had a very nice, concise
Thanks, everyone.
presentation for us, and I'm sure that we have more questions as time goes on, but you did a very nice job front to back. Thank you for your assistance. This meeting is adjourned.